Blanketed in haze, this could be the world's worst environmental disaster of the 21st century so far. The forest fires of Indonesia continue to burn, and the toxic fumes are enveloping a region. Millions of people are at risk. So how to stop these fires and the toxic haze? And what is the impact on global warming? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Martine Dennis. Now, it is perhaps the greatest environmental disaster of recent years and the worst forest fires ever recorded. Every year, Indonesia burns thousands of square kilometres of land. It's a cheap way to clear the land in readiness for the next crop. But this year, weather conditions have meant that the fires have had a catastrophic effect, blanketing much of Indonesia in a toxic haze that's affected around 40 million people. It's spread across large parts of Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand and the Philippines. In just a few weeks, Indonesia has produced more pollution than Germany does in a year. And it's a threat to human life. At least 19 people have died. Many thousands are ill. And it's a threat to the biodiversity of the Southeast Asia region. So we've got lots to discuss then with our guest today. But first, Step Vassen sets up things with this report from South Sumatra.
This is the epicenter of Indonesia's fire disaster. Thousands of hectares of acacia, used to make paper, are on fire. An inferno contributing heavily to the toxic haze affecting tens of millions of people in Indonesia and neighboring countries. Asia Pulp and Paper is one of the world's largest producers of paper and packing. The company's officials took Al Jazeera exclusively on a helicopter ride to their worst-hit plantations. A lack of visibility makes clear how efforts to control the fires are being hampered. The company says the blaze started outside its supplier plantations.
Roughly around 90% of the fires in our suppliers' concessions coming from outside. Yes, there are fires coming from inside as well. A lot of them that we have investigated so far are people coming into the conservation areas, hunters, gatherers, or people who just went past. I mean,
Isn't that an easy, it sounds so easy to me, blaming other people.
I'm not blaming other people. We have responsibility to make sure that the areas of our suppliers is actually protected.
This appears to have failed. The company blames extreme drought conditions because of the El Niño weather system and strong winds for causing the fires to spread rapidly. Supermarkets in nearby Singapore are boycotting products made by Asia Pulp and Paper, blaming the company for the fires, which are also affecting the city-state. 3 years ago, the company announced it would stop converting natural forest into plantations. Asia Pulp and Paper has been scrutinized for many years over its widespread deforestation. Now it's being criticized for its huge role contributing to this haze. Despite government promises to bring those involved to justice, this company has not been investigated. The government says it wants to focus on firefighting efforts before taking legal steps against anyone found responsible for starting the fires.
I think police investigate very much detail. We don't want to hurry to do this. We like to do it very steady here. In order,
People are worried they're going to get away with it, right? That they get off the hook.
I don't think so, but we will solve this problem. I promise you, because you see the impact of this is really huge. You know, 43 million people of Indonesia in that particular area affected by this haze.
The minister says slash and burn practices, which involves burning down existing vegetation before planting new ones, will be banned. The government also says it will take back hundreds of thousands of hectares of converted peatland from plantation companies and restore it. And as the fires continue to burn, Asia Pulp and Paper says they can only be stopped when the rainy season starts in 3 to 4 weeks. Step Vassen, Al Jazeera, South Sumatra, Indonesia.
All right, it's time to bring in our guests now. In Rome, we have Peter van Lierop, who's forestry officer with the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO. In Birmingham, the UK, Scott Edwards, who's doctoral researcher at the University of Birmingham, focusing on Southeast Asian diplomacy. And in Jazeera, Indonesia, joining us via Skype is Noor Hidayati, who's department head of advocacy for WALHI, the Indonesian Forum for Environment. Thank you all very much indeed for joining us for this conversation. But Noor, can I start with you in Indonesia? This is being described as the worst environmental disaster of the 21st century so far. Why is this being allowed to happen?
Yeah, this is a long time problem. It has been happening since mid-90s for 18 years now, approximately. And it is because of the way we exploit the natural forest for economic purposes. So since the 90s, Indonesia is has been cutting down its forests, and also especially for big plantation, monoculture plantation for palm oil and also for pulpwood plantation. And it's happening mostly in peatland areas, which is the carbon stock, and also when it is dried out, it emits a lot of greenhouse gas emission, and also the way it is being cleared out is by burning.
And
so this is
yes,
what is happening.
Slash and burn. Slash
yeah.
and burn is the technique, isn't it? That's how it's described. Now, this is something that's also carried out by indigenous small subsistence farmers as well. It's a traditional practice, isn't it? What sort of commitment is the government making to eradicating this as an agricultural practice?
No, it's totally different. What is done by the corporation, by these big companies, is bulldoze and burn. It's not a slash and burn. Slash and burn is done by the indigenous community for a limited area for their main livelihoods, like for rice or the basic needs, and it is not for commercial use. It's totally different from what has been done by corporation. They bulldoze the natural forest for thousands of hectares, and it's when they do it, they also cut off the peatland, building a huge canal to dry out the water from the peatland and then burn it. It's really different.
Right. Sorry, so I understand that point. Can I come to you then, Peter, in Rome, and ask you whether, from what Noor was saying, whether slash and burn as an agricultural practice is acceptable on a certain level, on a small level for individual farmers, and that the problem is caused by the extent of the practice by the big corporations?
Well, first of all, I would like to comment. I mean, I'm reading now all this week notices about that slash and burning being the cause of these fires, and I was very surprised to read this. This is now taking over on quite some time. I think even a lot longer than what Noor is saying. And slash and burning, if it's slash and burning for what and by whom? I agree with Noor saying a lot that in general people, especially talking about Kalimantan and Sumatra, where most of the peatland fires are taking place. People who live there have a rather well knowledge about their ecosystem, and of course fire is a tool which can be very efficient, but can also be very risky on peatlands. Now, however, in general, we more or less agree that the big fires which are taking place now and in the 90s and some years ago as well, in general are related with forest transformation from forest to the famous oil palm plantations. Now there are all kind of different processes, and those processes are also changing. Who is doing it exactly? Is it really the companies, or are it farmers who are being paid by the companies, or are it companies subcontracted? There are all kind of mechanisms in the way, but I think at this moment there's no doubt that the transformation of forest into oil, in the forest in Indonesia into oil palm plantations, it's definitely linked with the fires which are occurring now. And yeah, slash and burn, I mean, the oil palm plantations can also be being prepared by slash and burn. Huh?
All right. Going to Scott now in Birmingham. Scott, So it seems there seems to be a mixed opinion as to how whether slash and burn as an agricultural technique needs to be completely eradicated or whether it should be allowed to a certain degree. How should the government of Joko Widodo in Jakarta be responding to this? Because they're making the right noises, they're suggesting that they're trying to get on top of these fires, but not many people seem to have a great deal of faith that they're going to be effective in stopping these fires and indeed preventing them happening again next year.
I think part of the problem is, since 1999, Indonesia has decentralised a lot of its power to quite a strong degree, which means that for the national government to be able to combat these fires and to combat the causes, they would need to re-centralise some of that power and make sure they have the political willingness on the ground in order to combat the local causes of these problems. So I think the causes are very local, and to combat it in an efficient manner, we need to go beyond just national rhetoric and national legislation, but ensure that this national legislation is being felt on the ground in the provinces that are most affected.
So, Noor, it sounds from what Scott is saying that Indonesia, in order to deal with this problem, needs a complete overhaul of its system of government.
Yeah, part of the problem is true. It's the decentralization, where all the mostly for forestry and plantation, the licenses are coming from the district government. So in Indonesia, there are about, for example, 300 more districts, and every district head has authority to issue a permit for these purposes. Yes, now with the current new legislation, some of this power was taken by the provincial government, but only on plantation or oil palm plantation, the power is still on the district level. So we can see that there are how to say, a lot of interest here with especially with the political dynamic in the region and also in the district level that make it difficult to take back the authority to the national or to the provincial government.
So, Peter, in Rome, so clearly government is struggling for a variety of reasons to actually put out these fires and put in a system that will prevent this occurring again. What sort of help then is your agency offering to the government of Jakarta?
Well, I think the sad thing about this all is that this kind of messages are getting to the news now because we have already these big fires. And a bit of tragedy with fire management and dealing with fires is that as long as there are no fires, there's no attention for it. And it's exactly in those moments when more attention is needed to work on the prevention of fires. Fire often has to deal with the way land has been managed in the general sense. And if we're dealing in years when we don't have too many fires, it's extremely important to work on the prevention of these fires, to use your land in a way that does not increase the fire risk, I would say. So an integrated approach whereby prevention, preparedness, fire fighting and rehabilitation is all together in one program, which really is well balanced. That's mostly what we try to aim at. We are looking at 2 or 3 lines of work mostly now, and one is that we recognize that fire management, being fire a land tool, is something which should be dealt with at the land use level. It cannot be dealt with only forestry or only agriculture. Fire goes across all your different land uses. That's one. Secondly, we also realize that fires mostly take place in the countryside where government is far away. And the best way of dealing with it is giving communities ways of dealing with those fires. And we are thinking about 3 lines of work which can work at. We can using fire in a more intelligent way. Training farmers how to take more care when they use fire. We can also take, especially in very extreme situations, like for instance on the peatlands, we can think about looking for alternatives for fire, other options in conservation agriculture, in climate smart agriculture, which can help us to avoid the use of fire. Or even in a 3rd line of work might be to look for something for a completely different economical activity which does not need any use of fire. However, those kind of things only work if we really can do this together with the communities. That's why we think that fire management can only well dealt with if we work at the community level.
And Noor, is your perception that there is a robust political commitment from the government? We've already discussed how Indonesia is a very decentralised country, but from Jakarta, do you sense that there is a real political commitment from the government to try to work on this problem? And have there been appeals to the regional grouping of ASEAN, for instance, the new Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, for instance, because obviously resources are needed?
Yeah, we see some positive gesture, although it is not enough, because government is now trying to have a more or strict law enforcement, but by looking at companies and bring the companies to the court or the police. But we think that the government must not shy away from also exposing the big group or the big player that also backing the smaller companies, or even like the previous speaker said about who paid the farmers to burn the land, for example. There should be a hard law enforcement for this big player, because they have done it for years. And I think related with the ASEAN or the for regional, some of these big players also listed in our neighboring countries and coming from our neighboring countries as well. So I think there also needs to be some political will from that part to also, for example, give a hard warning or whatever sanction that is possible to make to have the company also not. Yeah.
All right. OK, well, all of this is going on, you see, just as world leaders are gearing up for the major climate summit that's due to take place later this month in Paris. It will be hosted by this man, the French president, François Hollande. He's currently in China, where he's trying to get support for what many hope will be a comprehensive deal on global greenhouse gas emissions. So, as I say, this big conference due in Paris in a few weeks from now, and Peter, in Rome, will COP21, as it's known, will it put in place, if it's successful, will it put in place some sort of framework that will outlaw this kind of situation that we're witnessing in Southeast Asia right now?
Well, I would like to make reference to a conference which took place 2 weeks ago in Korea. It was the International Wildland Fire Conference in Pyeongchang, where also FAO participated and helps to prepare this meeting. The final declaration came up in reality with a call to COP21 to acknowledge the role and to endorse the support of integrated fire management as an accountable contribution to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, to maintain or increase terrestrial carbon pools in all vegetation types, and ensure ecosystem functioning. The declaration also called up all the countries participating a commitment to strengthen the capacities of countries who need it to deal with these fires, mainly through community-based approaches, but also other issues like what Noor raised, the issue of law
Peter, but a
enforcement.
declaration is one thing and action is another. Does this mean that these fires will not happen again, is what I'm trying to ascertain?
I think we have to realize not only the seriousness of this fire problem, but also the situation, the characteristics of where these fires are taking place. We're dealing anyhow with fires on peatland and deep peatlines, which are extremely fire risk, and once they start burning, they are very difficult to stop. We're dealing with El Nino, the climatical phenomenon, which is causing a lot of drought, which is altogether strengthening the fires which are going on. I don't want to say we shouldn't work on decreasing the effects of fires. We definitely should, but we shouldn't expect any quick results, and we neither should expect results if we only react like we're doing now and in the past when the fires occur. Action should take place also mainly to prevent fires. If we want to prevent fires, there should be a lot more actions after the years when the fires takes place. What we most likely is going to see now, there might be some action, and in 1 or 2 years we have forgotten about the fires and nobody's working on prevention anymore. If we really want to do something about it, we should come up with plans which take for years, because the situation is serious. We cannot solve them in 1 year, and especially not forget to work on prevention issue outside the fire years.
OK, Scott in Birmingham, what should we do about it then? We need a much more intelligent system of land management, as Peter has pointed out. What about naming and shaming the companies, the big companies that are largely responsible, many of whom have their headquarters in other capitals, but they're vast palm oil plantations in Indonesia? How would that work?
I think part of the solution, and in naming and shaming these companies, is to try and motivate these companies not to engage in slash and burn practices to begin with. So I do think like extra law enforcement is important. Unfortunately, this is problematic because police at local level are often also not motivated to deal with the issue, and other kind of committees in place. So you've got the Anti-Corruption Commission, the KPK, Corruption Eradication Commission, which is also unable to kind of make itself felt in the region. But I don't think it's just the companies that we should be targeting as well. I think it's the local elites, the local kind of governmental administrators who are often involved with patronage networks within these companies. So I think in order to prevent these fires from occurring, the motivation, especially the financial motivation, needs to be removed by demonstrating there is strong enforcement in place and that the costs of doing this kind of business aren't particularly worth it for both the companies and the administrators themselves who enable it to happen because of their financial kind of patronage relationships with these corporations and companies.
OK, and Noor, so from what we've heard, it seems rather sad to say that the people of Indonesia could be experiencing this dreadful situation again next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if the government has not will not act the strict law enforcement and also issue regulation that protect the peatland and also stopping the transformation of natural forests into large-scale plantation, then we will see this fire happen again next year. So as it is said, it takes a lot of work from a lot of government agency and also communities to prevent this fire. But first, the central government must act, must lead strong leadership to have it and make it to the region.
And Noor, finally, would you give us a sense of how Indonesian people feel? Because, of course, it is a region-wide problem, but it's starting in your country. With thousands of people have been hospitalised with respiratory problems. People have even died, particularly children who are suffering. So noxious are the fumes. How do Indonesians feel?
Feel angry, and because we have experienced this for years. And we only see, for example, the previous government, previous president only act when neighboring government are protesting. So we are very angry and also sad at the same time because the people feel neglected by the state. So I think if the government really think about its citizens, then it is time to show a strong leadership for taking care of this problem from its root cause.
Noor Hidayati talking to us from Jazeera in Indonesia, Scott Edwards from Birmingham in the UK, and Peter van Lierop talking to us from Rome in Italy. Thank you all very much indeed. And of course, thank you for watching. As ever, you can leave your comments on the programme's page of our website, aljazeera.com. You can post your views on facebook.com/AJ Inside Story, or you can tweet us at AJ Inside Story. Thank you for watching from me, Martine Dennis, and the rest of the team. It's bye for now.